Hi guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Cassie Beebe. I am the author of Keep No Record, Broken Together, and the Greenwood Trilogy. And I am currently releasing a new sweet rom-com series on Kindle Vella, 1 week at a time, one chapter at a time. So if you're interested in checking that out, link is down below. It is a series of sweet rom-coms that all take place on the set of a reality dating show, kind of like The Bachelor. So if that sounds fun to you, check out the link down below. You can find it on Kindle Vella right now, or if you'd rather wait for it to be on ebook and paperback, you can also sign up for my newsletter, and I will send you updates whenever that happens. So first of all, sorry for the shaky camera. I don't have my whole setup going right now. But I wanted to film a little intro just so people aren't confused about what you're about to watch. So for the last few years, I have had the pleasure of teaching a couple classes at the Writing Gals Conference, which is my favorite conference. Well, I guess I haven't really been to many conferences, but I really love their conference because I am a romance author. And if you don't know who the Writing Gals are, they are a group of sweet romance authors, and they have a whole Facebook community called the Writing Gals. You can go join that if you want. It's open to any authors, but I would highly recommend it, especially if you write romance. And for the last couple years, they've had virtual writing conferences, and I've had the pleasure of teaching a few classes at them. So now that those conferences are over, those classes are just sitting on my computer, figuratively gathering dust, so I decided to go ahead and just put them up on YouTube so that you all can watch them and learn from them and enjoy them. So that's what you're about to watch. Just wanted to make that clear in case you're confused if I mention in the video the conference or the Facebook group or anything like that. That's why. So that, I think, is all you need to know in terms of disclaimers. So without further ado, here's the video. I hope you learned something from it and enjoy. Happy writing, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my class on reverse engineering outlines. My name is Cassie Beebe, and you might be wondering right about now, what do I mean by reverse engineering outlines? Well, we will get to that in a second, but first I want to talk to you about what it is that I am hoping to accomplish with this class. So what are we learning? With this method that I'm about to teach you, we are going to learn how to better understand plotting methods, and we're going to learn how to read books with a critical eye to learn about plotting structure. So basically what we're going to be doing in this class is I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do or how to use this method of studying plot beats that I have done in the past and that I have found to be really helpful for me. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how I do this, and then I will show you at the end of this class, I'll show you the end result of this process. Now, if you scroll down past the video a little bit on this page, you'll see you have access to 2 PDFs. Those are kind of the end result of what we're going to be doing in this class. So you could download those now and kind of look through them as I'm talking so you understand better, but it might be a little bit overwhelming if you look at that right now because it's just like a lot of information on a page, especially the second one is a lot of information on a page that might make you go, what the heck does this mean? So don't be overwhelmed. We'll walk through it all. I'll show you how to do this method, and hopefully it'll help you to learn how to better understand plotting structure. So that is what we are hoping to accomplish in this class. Now what you're going to need to do this is, first, you're going to need a plotting method / beat sheet, either one. So go whichever plotting method you are wanting to study. I've used this this process I'm about to show you. I've done this before with the Save the Cat plot beats, and it helped me to understand those a little better. But for our purposes today, I'm going to be using Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes, because this is a really good set of plot beats for romance writing specifically. So that's what we're going to be using today. And then the second thing you're going to need is a book, preferably a book in your genre. You can use any book, but I really find it helpful to study books that are actually in the genre you're writing, because every genre has different structures and different expectations and uses plot beats differently. So it's wise to study books that are in your genre. And then you're going to need some sticky notes, any size you want. I use the little tiny ones, and a pen/highlighter. I did not use a highlighter, but if you want to actually highlight in your book the specific lines as we go, you can. I didn't want to highlight in the book I'm using, so I just used the sticky notes and a pen. And then you're going to need a notebook or Word doc or an Excel document or all of the above. I used all of the above, and I will show you as we go along how I did that. So let's jump into the actual process, and I'll kind of further explain what it is we're doing here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a beat sheet and a book, and we're going to be, the end result is going to be an outline for that book. So we're going to be taking a beat sheet, a set of plot beats, and we're going to use those plot beats to study a book. And by the end of that process, we're going to come out the other side with our version of what an outline for that book would have looked like before the author started writing it. So for this class, as I said, I'm going to be using Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes as our beat sheet. And for our book, I wanted to choose something that is fairly well known. So hopefully some of you have read it before, because it is helpful if you are familiar with the story. But if you haven't read it, that's okay. We're going to be using The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. If you want to read it first and then come back to this video, you can, but I do want to warn people, since we have a lot of clean readers in the Writing Gals, I do want to warn you that this is not a 100% clean book. So if all you read is clean, then you're not going to want to read it. But it's okay. If you haven't read it, it's totally fine. You can still learn a lot through this process. But when you do this process on your own, I would definitely recommend using books that you're very familiar with, that you've read a few times before. It'll be a lot easier. And then the end result, we're going to have an outline, and either in Word doc form or written down in a notebook or in an Excel spreadsheet, which is kind of what I did. Well, I did all three, but I will be showing you that, which is what you have in your downloads on this page. So in this class, I want to teach you all how to do this on your own, and hopefully you'll learn something from the actual class as well. But this class is mostly to kind of give you the tools to do your own homework and to do this process yourself and work through it on your own. So we're going to take it one step at a time and try to keep things as simple as possible. So the first step, after you've chosen whatever set of plot beats you want to study and the book you want to use to study those plot beats, once you've chosen those two things, the first step is to familiarize yourself with your plot beats. So I don't want to make this a whole class just on Gwen Hayes' Romancing the Beat plot beats, but it is going to be very helpful if you guys understand those plot beats a little bit before we go into the rest of this. So I am going to take some time right now to explain the plot beats a little bit. So in Romancing the Beat, Gwen Hayes separates the plot beats into 4 phases. So she has kind of a 4-act structure for her plotting instead of a 3-act structure. So the first phase is called the setup phase, and the first plot beat we have in that phase is intro H1. So that just means this is the plot beat where you introduce your main character. Usually, your main female character is going to be the first character, the first of your 2 protagonists that you're going to introduce. So we have that plot beat, and then we have intro H2. So this is where, of course, you introduce the love interest, the second protagonist of the story. And then we have the meet cute. Everyone kind of knows what this is. You know, it's the moment. It doesn't have to be necessarily the moment that your characters meet, because sometimes in your book, your main protagonist and the love interest already know each other before the start of the book. So if they do already know each other, then this is just going to be the first moment that they are on the page together, and there needs to be some kind of like chemistry. Sparks should be flying at this point. Then we have the no way one plot beat, and this is where she says this is the argument your character voices against falling in love. So this is the moment where your character is going to say, not necessarily out loud, but the reader is going to pick up that the character is saying, there's no way I'm going to fall in love, and there's especially no way I'm going to fall in love with him. That is your no way one moment. And then after that, we have the adhesion plot thrust, otherwise known as the inciting incident, kind of. I would say they're pretty similar, but the adhesion plot thrust is basically the thing in your story that is going to propel your characters together for the rest of the story. So, if you have two characters who are co-workers who hate each other, and they're forced to work together on a project for this season of their career, that would be the adhesion plot thrust, is the moment that they find out they're going to have to work together as a team for this project. Then phase 2 is the falling in love phase. We have the no way to moment. This is where it's kind of a restatement of the no way 1 moment. It's where your character voices, a reason that they're not going to fall in love, they're not interested in a relationship, or maybe they are, but they're definitely not interested in a relationship with that person, and this is why. And if you didn't, in your first no way moment, if you didn't have both protagonists voice their no ways, then this is when you would have the other protagonist voice that. So if in the first beat of the no way 1 you only had your female character saying why she's not interested in a relationship, then this would be the time when you would have your male character voice his concerns. And then after that, we have the inkling this could work. This is the point in the story where you're starting to have a little bit more intimacy with the characters. They're starting to have a little bit of a hint of, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all, kind of thing. And then we have deepening desire. This is just a kind of one step further. So this is the point in the story where there's lots of long, lingering gazes, and your characters are definitely starting to have feelings for each other that they can't really ignore anymore. The next plot beat is maybe this will work, and this is the kind of like the culmination of a lot of that intimacy and that building desire. It's around the 50% mark. This is where Gwen Hayes says that if you have sex in your book, this is probably where the characters will be doing that. But if you don't have sex in your book, then this is more of a moment of true, deep intimacy between your characters. And then we have the midpoint of love thrust. And this is the moment where your characters kind of feel like everything is awesome, it's all going great. Maybe, like, this thing will actually work. It's funny that I say maybe this will work because that's what the last plot beat is called. But this is kind of where they feel it's a little more than a maybe. It's like, okay, this is going to work. This is awesome. If you have sexual scenes in your book, it might be the morning after where they're, just really happy together and it seems like everything's going really well. But and the readers know, that's probably not going to happen. Something is going to come up that's going to kind of mess that up. So that brings us into phase 3, which is retreating from love. So the first beat in the phase 3 is the inkling of doubt. So this is going to be just a little moment, a little something that kind of pokes at your character's wounds. So the things that you stated in the no way beats, this is when those things are going to start to come up again. If in your no way beat you found out that your character doesn't want to fall in love because her parents are divorced and she thinks all marriages they're always doomed to fail, then this would be maybe a moment where, I don't know, your male character does something that reminds her of her dad or something, or reminds her of her parents' relationship and makes her kind of think about that wound again and have a little bit of a, like, not quite a red flag pop up yet, but maybe like a yellow flag. Then we have deepening doubt. Now this is the point in the story where everything's still kind of going well, but those doubts are starting to get a little stronger. In my opinion, these sections in this retreating from love phase are a little bit blurry between the plot beats. It's a little hard to determine what is an inkling of doubt and what's deepening doubt. Like, when does it go from one to the next? But again, that's something that this process can help you discover. That's kind of why we're doing this, is so that you can study that yourself through reading a book and studying a book. So then the next plot beat is retreat, and this is where your characters are finally going to leave the subtext behind and really actually say that they have doubts and they are going to protect themselves, and they're not going to keep pursuing this relationship. Or I guess I shouldn't say that, because it's not the breakup stage yet. They're not breaking up. They're just saying, I have doubts and I am going to protect myself, and even if that means we have to break up. Then we have the shields up phase. This is where whatever they foretold in their no way beats comes true. So Gwen Hayes states it this way. She says, in the no way beat, you should have something like this: I don't believe in love / will never fall in love again / don't deserve love because blank. And then in the shields up beat, it should look like this: I knew better than to believe in love / love again / think I deserve love because when I let my guard down, blank. So you fill in the blanks with, like, I don't think I'm never gonna fall in love because, every relationship I know, people are always fighting about everything, and they always end up, they get in so many arguments that they don't love each other anymore, and it ruins the happiness they had when they were friends, and it just always ends in failure. So then in your shields up moment, this will be after something happened that confirmed that fear for your character, and they're like, see, I knew it. I never should have fallen in love because love only makes people hate each other, and it ruins whatever they had with each other before, and that's exactly what happened. And so they're putting all their shields back up. And then we have the breakup moment. This is kind of self-explanatory, so I'm going to move on to phase 4, which is fighting for love. The first beat in phase 4 is the dark night of the soul. This is where your character is just really down in the dumps, and it's also where they realize that they did this to themselves, that maybe it's kind of their fault that all of this happened and that their relationship didn't work out. Then you're going to have the wake up / catharsis, and this is where your character is going to realize that they need to choose love over fear. And, in the dark night of the soul, they realize that they did this to themselves. That they chose fear over love, and now your wake up moment is when they're going to say, okay, never mind, I was wrong. I need to choose love over fear instead. Then we move into the grand gesture, which is something we're all, I'm sure, very familiar with, when your character, one or both of your characters, has to go and make some kind of grand gesture, meaningful grand gesture. Obviously, I could talk forever about how to do a good grand gesture, but that's not what this class is about, so I'm just getting you a little familiar with these plot beats. So we all know what the grand gesture is, a little self-explanatory. So the next beat is what wholehearted looks like. So this is the point in your story where your characters are happy, everything's good, they're back together again, and you're not planning to break them apart again because this is the end of the book. So this is just a picture of what their lives look like once they are happy and in love and everything is going well. And then you have the epilogue, which is not necessarily always included, but most people, or a lot of people, do tend to include that, a little sneak peek into the future of your characters and their relationship together. Now, there are a few additional things that the Romancing the Beat book brings up that aren't exactly plot beats, but they are important to consider. So the first thing we have is theme. This is something that's going to be overarching throughout the entire book. Now, Gwen Hayes says that the theme of every romance novel is love conquers all. And the way that you make this unique to your story is to ask yourself, what is love going to conquer for my characters? For example, going back to the character who is, thinks that all relationships end in disaster and end in people hating each other, love is going to conquer her belief that relationships always are doomed to fail and that love always ends in people hating each other. Love is going to conquer that fear, that belief, that false belief that she has. Now, it is true that, that's a good way to think about the theme of romance novels, but your novel can also have other themes as well, external themes, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then another additional beat that's not really a beat per se, but it's something important to consider, is the external plot of the story. Obviously, romance novels, the main plot is the romance arc, but that can't be all that your story is. Well, I shouldn't say it can't be, but usually it's not. Even in a novella, I haven't read a lot of novellas, but I have read a few, and there are still external plots going on. Like, there are external things. For example, the adhesion plot thrust beat, that's usually related to some kind of external plot. If your two characters are coworkers who hate each other, but they just found out that they have to work together on a project, or else they're not going to get the promotion that they wanted or something, then that's an external plot, the fact that they're both vying for this same promotion. So most stories are going to have external plots, and that's how you add meat to your book. So it's important to consider, but it's not like one specific plot beat. This is something that goes all throughout the story, similar to themes. So now that we have gone through step 1, we've familiarized ourselves with our plot beats a little bit. The next step in this process is to read and stick. So this is the fun part that takes quite a lot of time. So you're going to take your book, whatever book it is that you've decided to read that's in your genre, and you're going to take your pen and your sticky notes, and you're going to read the book. And as you read the book, whenever you come across one of the plot beats you just studied, you're going to put a little sticky note there, and you're going to write down that plot beat. And this is going to take you a while. If you can see all of my sticky notes in this book, I actually really sped read this book, so I might have missed some things, but I'm pretty sure I got a good overall. I did the best I could. But so it did only take me 2 days to do this, but which is why the more familiar you are with the book, the easier this is going to be, because you kind of remember some of the plot beats already without even having to read it, so you know what to look for. But things can still surprise you, and I will definitely talk about that a little later, how there were a few surprises in this book for me. And that's why we're doing this, because even when you read a book many times, I've read this book several times before because I really love it. It's one of my favorites. But even so, when I read this, doing this process with the sticky notes and reading through and really, really trying hard to pinpoint every single plot beat, I learned a lot about how this book was structured that I did not notice just in reading it for enjoyment. So that's what this whole process is about. So that's step number 2. Get to reading, get to sticking, and then we'll move on. So to give you a few examples, I'm not going to go through every single sticky note in this book because obviously that would take us 7 million years. But to give you a couple examples, we have page 2. On page 2 is where I put a sticky note for intro H1. So, our main character is on page 1. The whole book is written from her POV, so she's on every page, technically. But page 2 is where I put the sticky note for intro H1, because this is really where we actually got some description of the character, and we got that via her comparing herself to her twin sister, because the setting of this scene is that it's her twin sister's getting married, and they're in the bridal suite getting ready for the wedding. And so she starts thinking about, all the ways that she and her sister are similar and are different. So that's kind of how we get introduced to our main character. Example number 2 on page 3 is the first time the theme of luck comes up. So this is an external theme, not a love conquers all theme, but an extra one in this book. And let me tell you, sometimes when you're going through this process, you might not notice everything right away, and you might notice it later and then have to go back a little bit. So I noticed on this page, our main character, Olive, is talking about how her sister is very lucky, and she's always winning these contests and everything, and how Olive is not lucky at all. She's always very unlucky, and that's kind of one of the ways that she compares herself to her twin. Now, I didn't think much of this until, I would say, the third time the concept of luck came up in this book. That's when it popped up a flag in my head, and I said, luck is going to be a theme in this book, so I need to start tracking that. So I went back a little bit. I put a sticky note on this page, said theme, luck. That's the first time that came up, and throughout the whole book, I'm going to put a sticky note down every time the theme of luck is mentioned. And then on pages 12 and 13, we have 2 what I call love conquers all moments. I just used finger quotes with 3 fingers, so that's a new thing apparently. You can steal it. But I call these love conquers all moments. So this is basically the way that I started tracking the theme of love conquers all. So as before I went through and did this process, I wrote down, what is love going to conquer for these characters? And you might not know that when you start doing this process, and throughout the process you will learn it, but I decided to track those things with a sticky note that says love conquers all. So let me give you an example. So on page 12, Olive is talking about how her mother and father they're not divorced, but they are separated, and they really hate each other. Her dad cheated on her mom, yes, and her mom kicked him out, but then refused to divorce him. So there's a lot of tension in their family, and she has just not a good example of what marriage looks like and what happy love looks like. So I decided that seems like a love conquers all moment, that this is something that love is going to conquer by the end of the story. Olive has a little bit of cynicism when it comes to romance because of her parents. So I'm going to put down a sticky note and take note of the fact that is part of what love is going to conquer for Olive. And then on the very next page, we have a totally separate love conquers all moment where Olive is talking about our main love interest character named Ethan. And she's talking about how much she hates him and how he is pretentious and annoying and rude. So that became a love conquers all moment, because we know by the end of this book, she's going to be in love with this guy. So by the end of the book, love is going to conquer her current feelings of distaste towards him. Whatever misconceptions she has about him, love is going to conquer that by the end of the story. So that was a noteworthy moment to take note of with my sticky notes. And then I also decided to track external plot points. So on page 18, I put a sticky note down because Olive was talking about the fact that she recently got laid off from her job. And since I've read this book before, I know that a big part of the plot of this book is her getting a new job. So the fact that she got laid off is a pretty important external plot moment. So I tracked that as well. So those are just a few examples of what your sticky notes might look like as you go through this process of reading and sticking. And then there were a few things in this book that kind of deviated from the plot beats that I was studying, which, by the way, is obviously going to happen, okay? Because Christina Lauren, which if you don't know, Christina and Lauren are actually two different women. They're a team of writers. So if I refer to them as if they're two people and that's confusing to you, that is why. They are two people. So Christina and Lauren probably didn't use the Romancing the Beat plot sheet to plot their book. So obviously, as we're studying the Romancing the Beat plot beats, they're not going to fit this book perfectly, and that's okay. We can still learn as best as we can. It doesn't need to be perfect, and it's not going to be because they didn't, presumably, I don't know if they used this method, but it doesn't look like they did because they deviated from it a little bit. So that's important to keep in mind as you're going through this. However, sometimes you will find that there are no deviations. For example, I did this process once with the Save the Cat plot beats, and I used the Hunger Games book, and it was spot on perfect. Like, I wouldn't actually be surprised if Suzanne Collins used the Save the Cat plot beats to plot the Hunger Games because they fit perfectly. So sometimes they fit perfectly, but most of the time they're probably not going to, and that's okay. So the first thing I noticed that was a deviation from the plot beats, and this was fascinating to me, and this is the kind of stuff that gets me excited. This is why I wanted to show you guys how to do this, because I would not have noticed this if I hadn't gone through this whole process, and it was very, very important for me to learn. So when I look at plot beats, I tend to think that they're probably each going to be like one moment, maybe two, maybe three at the most moments in the book that represent that plot beat, you know, like the adhesion plot thrust. Okay, that's this one moment, that was the adhesion plot thrust, and now we're done with that beat, right? But when it came to the inkling of what is it called? Not the inkling of desire. The inkling this could work. When it came to the inkling this could work moment and the deepening desire moment, those two plot beats, this book, I counted 9 times that I would say there was an inkling this could work beat, and 13 times that there was a deepening desire plot beat. So keep in mind that these plot beats don't have to just be one beat and one moment. And that actually, let me tell you, like, that just blew me away when I realized that through studying this book, and it honestly made me a little insecure about my own writing, because I just finished writing a book, a first draft, which is with some beta readers right now, and I was feeling like the romance was maybe a little bit lackluster, like maybe I didn't put quite enough moments in where they're like flirting or, you know, having that fun, you know, this is the fun part of the book. The inklings this could work and the deepening desire moments, that's like all the fun stuff. And reading this book and finding out that there are 9 inklings this could work and 13 deepening desires, that's a lot. That's like a good maybe third of the book is those moments over and over and over, back to back, boom, boom, boom. And it made me realize that is probably why I love this book so much and why so many people love this so much, because this is the fun part, and Christina Lauren just did that a lot for like a huge chunk of the book. So that was kind of the first lesson I learned from this process with this particular book. So I thought I would share it with you. Now, another way that this book deviated from the typical Romancing the Beat structure is that what I would call the breakup makeup cycle, it cycled 3 separate times. So what I mean by that is, going back to our phases, we have the retreating from love phase and the fighting for love phase, right? So retreating from love is when you have the inkling of doubt, the deepening doubt, retreat, shields up, break up, and then, you know, everything's terrible, it ends, and then you go into the fighting for love, where there's the dark night of the soul, and then the wake up moment, the grand gesture, what wholehearted looked like. This book did that whole cycle 3 times. So instead of just doing it once, where, things are going pretty well, and then there's a moment where it's like, uh-oh, maybe this isn't going well, and then you go through all the, oh no, maybe this is terrible moments, and then back into the, no, it's good, we're gonna make it work. Instead of just doing that once and then ending, they did all that, and then they just jumped right back to the retreating from love. They jumped right back to another inkling of doubt. So it went through all of these beats, got to about like the wake up moment, maybe the grand gesture, a little bit of wholehearted, and then it jumped back to the inkling of doubt. Went through it all again, all the way up to wholehearted, and then went back to inkling of doubt and did it all again a third and final time. And this time it was like the breakup is not like a soft, like we weren't really a couple yet, but we'll kind of break up. It was like, for sure we were a couple and we're definitely breaking up. That was the last cycle it went through. It was more straightforward and more significant. And then that's when we went through our final cycle of waking up and the really big grand gesture. The other two grand gestures were very small. This one was like the big one, the over-the-top one. And then we got the true wholehearted moment, and then we finally got our epilogue. But it went through that whole process 3 separate times, which is definitely a big deviation from the plot beat structure. So again, just keep in mind as you're doing this process with whatever book it is you're studying, it's not going to fit into whatever plot beats you're studying perfectly, but hopefully you've chosen one that fits well enough that you can at least learn something from studying it. And you can learn something from the deviations too, because sometimes that gives you some encouragement that, hey, this is a really, really popular book, and look how much they deviated from these plot beats. So that might give you some encouragement that if your instincts are telling you, I kind of want to do this, but it deviates from the plot beats a little bit, like, here's some evidence that, maybe that's a good instinct. Maybe that'll work out for you, because it certainly worked for Christina Lauren with this book. All right, so we've familiarized ourselves with our plot beats. We've done our reading and sticking. We've gone all the way through the book now at this point in the process. Now the next step you want to do is calculate percentages. Now let me show you what I mean by that. So you're going to want to go to Google. You're going to type in percentage calculator. And let me see. I would click on this first one, percentage calculator, and you're gonna look at your book and you're gonna see how many pages is your book. So the book I'm studying is 395 pages. So I'm gonna plug that number in here, 395, and I'm gonna say, what is 10% of 395? Now, I didn't really need a calculator for 10%, but you might need it for later. So 10% is an easy one. But so you're going to see, okay, 39.5 is 10% of 395, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to page 39 or 40, since it's 0.5, you could do either one. But we're going to go to page 39. We're going to put a sticky note in here that says 10%. That tells us that at this point in the story, we are 10% of our way through the book. And then you're just going to keep doing that for all the percentages. You're going to go, what's 20%? 79. So you go to page 79 and you put another sticky note in that says, okay, now we're 20% of the way through the book. And you're going to do that all the way till you get to 100%. And the reason we're going to do that will be made clear when we look at the outline at the end, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. But for now, just get that done, get your percentage calculator up, calculate your percentages, put it in the sticky notes, and set it aside. Now it is time to compile your data and create your outline. So this is the point in the class where I want you to pull up the 2 different PDFs that you have available to you there. So the first one we're going to pull up, and I'll pull it up on my end as well. Now the first document you want to pull up is the one that looks like this. So there are basically 2 different levels of the outlines that we are going to compile with all of this data we just studied. This is sort of the more simplistic one, and then the Excel sheet is a little bit extra. So we'll go over that in a minute. But for the simplistic one, what you're going to do is you're going to take all of the plot beats that you just put your sticky notes on. You're going to go through it and write it all down. You're going to make an outline for the book. So first you're going to talk about your themes. If there was any theme in the book that you came across, you'll write that down. So I wrote down the theme of luck or fate or destiny. That was definitely a running theme throughout the entire book. And in this version of the more simplistic outline, I haven't written down any page numbers. We'll be doing that in the Excel sheet, which I'll show you in a minute. So for now, I'm just saying this was a theme in this book. And then I'm going to say, or I guess we should talk in future tense, right? Because we're pretending that we're making an outline for a book that hasn't been written yet. So the theme of luck is going to be a theme in this book because the female main character's sister is generally a lucky person, and our main character feels unlucky in life, and she often blames her struggles on bad luck, and it sometimes keeps her from pursuing certain options for fear that her bad luck will be a hindrance. The theme of luck is going to be sprinkled throughout the entire story, as are the love conquers all themes, which are listed below. So then I put together love conquers all themes for the female main character and the male main character. You can read through those here if you want to see more of what I mean by that. These are the love conquers all themes that I took note of in this book. And then I listed out all of the major external plots that are running throughout the story. And then I got into the actual romancing the beat plot beats. So the main story outline, I've got phase 1 set up, the intro to H1. So I wrote down how that introduction goes, and a short explanation of what our character's like and how she's introduced. Then we got intro to H2, where the male character is introduced, the meet cute. I wrote down how that happens. I'm not going to go through this whole thing because I'm not going to read it all to you right now. You can read it yourself. That's why I've given it to you. But basically, I just read through in order, one by one. I just sat down at my computer, flipped a few pages till I got to another sticky note and said, okay, here's an inkling, this could work moment. What happened here in this moment? And then I wrote it down in the inkling, this could work section. So that's how I compiled this list. I just sat down one by one, flipped to the next sticky note, wrote down that moment, flipped to the next one, wrote down that moment, and I did that until I got through the entire book, and it took a little while. But as you can see, I got a lot of good stuff written down. This is a very extensive outline, so you can kind of see the point of this is so that you can see what an outline for this book might have looked like before it was written, so that you can compare this outline to whatever outline you have for your book that you haven't written yet. And you can see, does my outline measure up to this? Does this seem a lot better than mine? Does it seem like there are more of certain plot beats than mine had? Like, for example, I discovered in this process that it seemed to me that this book has a whole lot more deepening desire plot beats and inklings this could work than my book had. And that did make me wonder if maybe I need to add a little bit more of that in my book. Maybe I need to have a little more of the fun and games part of the book where the characters, are getting butterflies about each other and flirting with each other and feelings are developing. I might not have put quite enough of that in my book because my outline definitely does not measure up to this. And by the way, I think this would be a good time for me to mention that part of what makes this process so helpful is to do this with a lot of different books. I only had time right now to do it with one because this took quite a while, but you want to do this with a lot of different books so that you can compare them to each other. do it with books you love, do it with books you hate, and see, like, why did I hate this so much? Maybe you'll go through and you'll come up with your outline in the end, and you'll be like, oh, well, there was like no inklings this could work. Like, that plot beat wasn't even there, and the deepening desire wasn't even there. So of course I didn't like this book, because it went straight from the no way moment to the maybe this could work moment, and that's not good. So, you can learn things from books that you don't like just as much as you can from books that you do like. And you can compare them to each other, because two books that you love might be very different from each other. So you can see what are parts of these books that were the same and which parts are different. Why did that matter? Did that make a difference? Did I like one more than the other? There's lots that you can learn, but the only way you learn it is by studying, making the outlines, and then comparing them to each other. So you got to do this with, you don't have to do anything, but if you want to use this process, it would be nice if you did it with a bunch of different books so that you have things to compare to. Now, the thing that really is fun to compare, and this is the stuff that makes me really excited, because I'm a bit of a nerd. I really love Excel spreadsheets. By the way, if you don't have Microsoft Excel, I actually use OpenOffice Calc, I think is what it's called, and it's literally like the same thing as Excel, but it's free. So if you really want to do this process I'm talking about, and you're like, oh, I don't have Excel and I don't want to buy it, just download OpenOffice. It's the same thing and it's free. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's mostly the same. So now's the time where I want you to open up the second PDF document that you have there on your screen. And this is the fun stuff, okay? This is the stuff where I got really specific and really nerdy. So in the other outline, you remember we have a more descriptions of the moments. For example, I have like the meet cute, and then I kind of describe what the meet cute was like and what happens in it, because for this I was kind of going for more of like what a real outline would feel like. If you're making an outline, you're not just going to say, I want the meet cute to be on page 27. You're going to say, I want the meet cute to look like this. This is what's going to happen. But in this document, that's not quite what we're doing. I do have a short description of each moment, but for this, we're mostly paying attention to the numbers, and we're using this to teach ourselves something about pacing, okay? So what we've done is we did the same exact thing that we did with the other outline. We sat down with our book. We went through point by point. We said, all right, page 2, intro to H1. Here's a short description. All right, then the next sticky note was on page 3. That was because the theme of luck came up. And then here's a short description of what happened. Then the next sticky note was page 5. There's more intro to H1, more on page 9. And then we had some love conquers all moments, and external plot, intro to H2, meet cute, no way 1, external plot, no way 1, adhesion plot thrust. Okay, so we're going through every sticky note, writing it all down. And here is where your percentages come in, because once we hit that sticky note that says 10%, you're going to put into your document 10% complete. And you're going to do that every time you get to a sticky note that says, 10% complete, 20% complete, 30% complete, 40%. And the awesome thing about that is when you compile all of your data together at a single glance, you know where in the story, percentage-wise, certain things are happening. So you can get a single glance and say, okay, the adhesion plot thrust happened before the 10% mark. So that's pretty early on in the story, right? You want to make sure you get that point in early, or at least if you want to emulate this book. If you really liked this book, whatever book it is you're studying, you think they did it well, then you could say, okay, they got their adhesion plot thrust in before the 10% mark. So that's pretty early on. And then let's say you want to say, okay, when does the maybe this could work moment happen? Because that's a really big moment. Remember, if you have Gwen Hayes said that if you have more of a spicy book where people are having sex, then that's when that would probably happen. It's around the 50% mark is what she said. And if you don't have sexual intimacy, then it's, other kind of intimacy, emotional intimacy. This is where, like, things are really happening. This is like the couple is finally kind of getting together. When did that happen in this book? Well, if we go down, we'll see it happens right here, which is just after the 50% mark and quite a bit before the 60% mark. So just like when Hayes suggested, Christina Lauren put this moment at about the 50% mark of her book. And then we can see we've got some doubt coming in, and then we've got like we talked about, she goes through 3 rounds of that. So we've got more doubt, and, towards the end, we see that we've got a lot of external plot going on because the couple has already had their wholehearted moment here and a mini grand gesture. So that was after the second cycle. So there's not as much romantic stuff. There is romantic stuff going on a little bit, but for the most part, we're focusing a little more on the external plot and wrapping up those loose ends by the end of the book. And then at the very end, after the 90% mark, so this is like pretty close to the end of the book, that's when we get the last dark night of the soul, the last final big grand gesture, wholehearted moment, and the epilogue. Now, one more thing you'll notice that you've probably been noticing this whole time as I've been going through this is that I color-coded this spreadsheet. And that, my friends, is what makes this just so easy to look at a glance, because I've color-coded everything so that you can quickly see, I put external plot in kind of this light yellow color. So I can go through easily and see where all those external plot moments are just at a glance. And then, the deepening desire. I kind of tried to play with the colors. I made more of the romantic stuff pink, and then I used different shades of yellow for like the kind of external things that aren't plot beats, like the external plots and the love conquers all moments. And I could have used yellow for the theme as well, but since the theme is luck, I decided to make it green because luck and green kind of go together. So that was one more thing I wanted to point out to you. I talked to you earlier about how the theme of luck is sprinkled all throughout the entire story. And like I said, when I got to like the third time, maybe like right here, when luck was introduced a couple times in a row, that's when I kind of realized, okay, I think luck is going to be a theme. So I went back to page 3 and I was like, okay, here's the first time it's mentioned. And then I started tracking it after that. And if you look through, it is actually incredible how often that theme pops up throughout the story. It kind of slows down a little bit here because we're really focused on the deepening desire moments, and we're not really wanting to think too much about the external plot. But then, it picks up again towards the end. I mean, there's just a lot of moments where that theme of luck comes in, especially in the 90%, after the 90% mark of the book, it pops up a lot. And I think that was really well done on Christina Lauren's part. I think they really did a good job of sprinkling their theme throughout and then driving it home in the end to bring it back around and tie it up with a nice little bow. So I'm really glad that I decided to track that, because at the beginning, when I noticed that it might be a theme, I was like, that might come up a couple times. And I was shocked at how many times it came up. So that really taught me something about how themes are more valuable and more important than maybe I even thought they were. And maybe I want to explore that in my books. And I want to make sure that if I introduce a theme at the beginning, I sprinkle it evenly throughout the whole story, like Christina Lauren has done here, and I really drive it home at the end with a big final punch. I think that's really valuable. So yeah, there are just a lot of things that you can learn through this spreadsheet. Like I said, you have the spreadsheet yourself. This exact thing, it's not in an Excel form, it's in a PDF form, but it's something you can look at. And I'm not sure if I can share, like, if I can share this in an... I probably can. If I can share this in this form so that you can take this whole thing and just kind of like plug in your own information for new books, I don't know if that would be helpful for people, but if you want me to do that, I can do that on the Facebook group for the Writing Gals conference. So check in there if you want to see. I'll probably post this somewhere so that if you want to take this and, you know, change the colors and change the content but kind of keep the same overall structure, you can do that. But it's simple. I mean, I just put plot, beat, page, and description at the top and then filled it all in. So it's not a super complicated spreadsheet to make yourself. But you have all of this to look at, and you have this whole outline to look at if you want to study that. So to go back through the steps one more time, step 1, we familiarized ourselves with our plot beats a little bit, and then we read our book and put in our sticky notes. Then we calculated the percentages and put in those sticky notes as well, the percentages of 10% through the book, 20%, 30, 40, all the way to 100. And then we compiled our data and we created our outlines. And I will say, if you wanted to stop at that point and just do read and stick and then call it a day, you probably still will have learned a lot. But personally, I really found it very helpful to do the percentages and compile the data, especially the percentages, because something that I personally find it really difficult to gauge myself if my book's pacing is good, because that's one of those things. There are a few things that, editing-wise, that when you're too close to a story, it's just impossible for you to know. And one of those is pacing. I mean, I've spent months and months and months with these characters, so to me, it would be almost impossible for it to feel like they fell in love too fast, because I've been with them for a really long time. But, so it's hard to tell sometimes if you're going too fast or too slow or if your pacing is right. So I found the percentages thing to be really valuable to study so that you can look at that spreadsheet and see, okay, you know, this is where they had this plot beat and this one and this one. And you can also do this with your own books. Do this exact process with your own books, the ones, you know, your works in progress that you haven't published yet. Do this, make your spreadsheets, see where your plot beats line up with the percentages, and maybe that will show you like, oh, I had my adhesion plot thrust wasn't until like the 30% mark, and most of the books I've studied, they have it at like the 10% mark, so that's probably too late. You know, so that's a practical way that you could use this process to study your own work and apply it to your own writing. So yeah, that is all. That's all I got for you guys. I really hope that this was helpful for you. There is a YouTube link there. I don't think you can click on it, but you can type it in to your browser, or I could probably also post it on, again, in the Writing Gals group for the Facebook group for the conference. But that video is the first time I did this process. Again, I mentioned before I did this in the past with the Save the Cat plot beats and the Hunger Games book, and that was the first time I had ever done this. I'd never seen anyone do it before. I just kind of thought it might be cool, and as I was doing it, I was like, okay, this was way more than cool. It was like really, really informative and taught me so much. So that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about it, and I did it again. Today we used the Romancing the Beat plot beats, but in that video I used Save the Cat. So if that's something if you want to see me go through this process again in a slightly different way with different plot beats and a different book, you can go check out that video. But yeah, that is it. I hope this was enjoyable for you guys and that you learned a lot. And let me know what you think. And if you have any questions for me, I will be in the Facebook group. I'm in all the groups. I'm in the group for the conference and the Writing Gals main group and the critique group. I'm even in the No Drama Llama rom-com group. So you can find me anywhere. Just pop in, ask me a question. Feel free to instant message me if you want, but do keep in mind that Facebook, when people message you and you're not friends with them already, their messages go into like a separate folder that says message requests, and Facebook never tells you that they're there unless you just stumble upon it and happen to see it. So if you send me a private message and I don't reply right away, I probably just didn't see it. So feel free to reach out to me in groups or however you like. And yeah, that is going to be all. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye!